Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start the program for the morning. If I can just get your attention. Thank you. Thank you so much, and I'm sorry to interrupt your conversation over breakfast. It's one of the magical parts of coming to an event like this is meeting other great people around the table, and I hope you all had a chance to do that. Please join me now in welcoming our webcast viewers. My name is Andrew Graham. I'm president of the Canadian Club of Toronto, and I'm your host today. Viewers, we're very pleased to have you joining us. Please note that everyone can visit ai-live.com to access captioning on your device today. There's further instructions about this on your table as well. Our club is in the business of attracting people who influence what happens in our province and in our country. We're fortunate to have decision makers from politics and from business and other sectors at our podium, and we've been doing this now for over 120 years. And we're very excited to have a speaker today who is very much an example of someone who is making very important decisions and having a huge impact on our province and on our country. We've been very fortunate, in fact, to have a number of ministers from the provincial government. We had Minister Bethlenfalvy just recently at our podium to another sold-out crowd, and we feel very excited to hear from our ministers at Queen's Park. So thank you very much, Minister Bethlenfalvy, for being with us again. These events wouldn't be possible without the sponsors who take part. I'd like to acknowledge a few different sponsors today. First of all, Bruce Power, represented by Pat Dalzell. The Ontario Real Estate Association, OREA, represented by Karen Cox. And Bell Canada, represented by Simon Dwyer. Bell Canada supports young leaders and other youth to come to these events. Thank you to the three of you and your organizations. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. For the past several days, Ontario's Finance Minister has been in front of the cameras and microphones responding to questions and talking about the budget that he delivered just last week. Its content has been much anticipated since the government was formed last June. The Honourable Victor Fedeli, who is also Chair of Cabinet, has an impressive business and political background. Being in the spotlight on important issues comes very naturally to the former mayor of North Bay. And as I mentioned last time I was at the podium, we were fortunate to have the minister just recently. My in-laws come from North Bay, and I know firsthand from hearing my father-in-law talk how much of a name and celebrity and someone who's well-respected in North Bay Minister Fedeli is. He was first elected to Queen's Park in 2011. After re-election in 2014, he served in opposition as the Energy and Finance Critics. Now in his third term in provincial politics, he oversees one of Premier Doug Ford's critical portfolios, finance. Minister Fedeli, I'm very pleased to pass the Canadian Club of Toronto's podium over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. You did make a very good decision in marrying a North Bay friend. So we'll always have that, Andrew, for sure, you and I. It's great to be joining Colleen and her team at the Canadian Club this fine morning, and to have all of you with us. Thank you very much for taking time out of your very busy days to be here for yet another speech. But we're deeply appreciative. I bring you greetings on behalf of Premier Ford. He is so excited. We talked, he called me the other night. It was late at night. Sorry, I'm going to tell you a few little personal anecdotes as we go through this. He called me late at night, and I was sound asleep, but my phone was off, and I rolled over, and I saw the light flashing on the phone. I thought, somebody's calling me at this hour. And I looked, and it was Premier Ford, and I answered it, and he said, "Oh, buddy, I can't sleep. I'm so excited. This budget was so good." He said, "You knocked it out of the park, buddy. Good night." So he asked me to personally bring his greetings to you this morning. I also want to acknowledge, I'll do a few of those throughout the speech just to just to break it up a bit today. I want to acknowledge my great friend, and he'll tell you that there's no daylight between us when it comes to our finances, Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy, and for the great work you've been doing. Want to also acknowledge Minister Bill Walker. You're going to hear a little bit about what, I'm going to call you Billy, about what Billy's been up to as well in transforming our government. So, Minister Walker, thank you for being here. My Deputy Minister, Greg Orenchek, is here representing the public service, and I'll tell you, just a remarkable job. Team Fedeli and Team Finance worked so well together on the budget document, so thank you, Greg, for your just outstanding work, and you and your team. Parliamentary Assistant Doug Downey is here. I'm going to talk a little bit about Doug and the great work that he's done. Thank you for being here this morning as well, Doug. We have many MPPs who are here with us today, and I would like the MPPs, if you'll take a moment and stand wherever you are. The MP. Thank you very much. And finally, we have my Chief of Staff, Dan Miles, and the Premier's Chief of Staff, Dean French, are also here. And a big hand, please, for Team Ford, who are here today. Well, we're all breathing a collective sigh of relief after the months of hard work that went into Thursday's budget. We're very, very happy with the results of the budget. We released our first budget of our first mandate, and it's appropriately called Protecting What Matters Most. And it marks a new beginning in the province. It sets Ontario back on a path to balance. It invests more money in healthcare and education, but mostly it sends a message to the world that we are serious about fiscal sustainability, about protecting frontline services, and making Ontario open for business and open for jobs. We have created a comprehensive and sustainable plan that will take us to balance in 5 years with no new tax increases, not a single one. This approach is a reasonable approach, and it is the responsible approach. And through prudent financial management, our government has already made significant progress to reduce the deficit we inherited from our predecessors. You have to appreciate, I've said this in every one of my speeches because it is so astounding. The previous government was spending $40 million a day more than they took in. In 9 short months, we have reduced the deficit by $3.3 billion, down from $15 billion to $11.7 billion, and our government is projecting to further reduce the deficit by nearly $1.5 billion next year, lowering the deficit to $10.3 billion. Now, at the same time, we are bringing spending back to a level that is sustainable. All of us, everybody here, we all need to come together to face this urgent threat that is posed by Ontario's debt and deficit. The fact is, our government is increasing year-over-year investments in healthcare and education, but we cannot kid ourselves. The challenge of an aging population, older schools, hospitals, and roads, those challenges are real and will require investment. But given the fiscal mess we inherited, do you really think healthcare will be there for our kids if we continue to run endless deficits? Do you really think our public education system will flourish when government continues to pile on more and more debt? And of course, the answer is a resounding no, and that's why balancing the budget is the critical first step to protecting our core services. Balancing the budget requires discipline, determination, and an appetite to take a different approach. But we know that talk is cheap, and we have to translate those words into action. Governments must be held to account when they make these bold public commitments. That is why our government is proposing a robust new legislative framework called the Fiscal, Sustainability, Transparency, and Accountability Act. And this represents the first comprehensive change to Ontario's fiscal planning in a decade and a half. And as part of those changes, our government is introducing a first of its kind in Canada, an accountability guarantee for both the Premier and the Minister of Finance. It would require both to pay a fine of 10% of the Premier and ministerial salaries for each missed reporting deadline. Quite literally, we are putting our money where our mouth is. Thank you. Now, we're not talking about just some platitude here. Had the previous government had this in place, it would have cost the Minister of Finance $40,000 for the missed or ignored deadlines, and it would have cost the Premier $75,000 for their missed or never appearing deadlines. So, as you know, it has often been said in the world of business that when you're in a hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. Well, our government for the people have put down the shovels and are now sifting through every aspect of government to try to find a way out of this deep financial mess. We are looking at every program, every agency, every board, every commission to drive efficiencies, find cost savings, and enable the modernization of government services. We're reviewing our capital investments as well, putting them on a more sustainable and realistic level. We're pleased to report these efforts have already resulted in substantial savings and cost avoidance. During the provincial election, Premier Ford said he wants to find 4 cents on every dollar. Well, to date, under the leadership of our Treasury Board President, Peter Bethlen-Falvey, our government has nearly doubled that and found about 8 cents on every dollar spent. Congratulations, Peter. Well done, pal. Our government has also put an end to the so-called March Madness, and again, we're not talking basketball here, sorry. It's referring to this annual habit of year-end spending spree throughout government and agencies. This year-end March Madness is fundamentally disrespectful to the taxpayer, and on behalf of the Premier, if I can imitate him just once, it's gone, it's done. I didn't do it as well as the Premier, but I think you get the message. Restoring the people's trust starts with getting our fiscal house in order, and we're delivering on that with a reasonable, responsible, and measured path to balance. All this while protecting frontline jobs and enabling $26 billion in investments over 6 years in much-needed relief to individuals, families, seniors, students, and businesses. Now, everything we do is about protecting what matters the most. It's about protecting those cherished public services that millions of people across this province rely on every day. Our public health system, our public education system, and our critical public services. We are working to make life easier, more affordable for the people of the province of Ontario, and that starts with giving hardworking parents relief and empowering them to make the best choices for their children's future. That's why our government is bringing in one of the most flexible childcare initiatives ever introduced in Ontario. It's the new Childcare Access and Relief from Expenses Tax Credit. Thankfully, we'll call it CARE for short. CARE would help low- and middle-income families with up to 75% of their eligible child costs per year, and that includes daycares, home-based care, summer camps, and other settings. This was a key campaign promise, and we're delivering just as we're delivering on our commitment to end hallway health care. We are strengthening and protecting our public care system by reducing the bloated health care bureaucracy. And we're moving towards an integrated healthcare delivery model and establishing Ontario Health Teams. Through these initiatives, we are putting patients first. And to support our aging seniors, We are investing in 30,000 long-term care beds, and this turns out to be truly a signature program. We are investing $90 million to support a new dental care program for low-income seniors. I can tell you in MPP's offices, in my office for 8 years, so many low-income seniors would come into our office, and there's just nothing possibly worse than chronic pain, especially oral pain. And now we are bringing relief to up to 100,000 low-income seniors. We are reforming our public education system so it focuses on the basics, including a strong emphasis on financial literacy. We are not only integrating financial literacy into the grade 10 career course, but we're starting our kids earlier by incorporating it into the math curriculum across all grades. That is how our government is protecting what matters the most. Now, we also need to start holding government to a higher standard, and that is why we're introducing a digital-first strategy. Now, you'll notice Minister Walker calls it digital-first. It's not digital only, but we're bringing the government into a 21st century that will make things simpler, faster, and better. And we'll start by enhancing Service Ontario's top 10 transactions, which include the issuing of a driver's license, a vehicle permit, and a health card. This will shift approximately 10 million in-person transactions to digital channels, and that will save the government $33.5 million over the next 5 years. When Premier Ford talks about efficiencies, this is exactly what he's talking about, and thank you, Minister Bill Walker, for delivering on this one efficiency, along with many, many others. I know the speech is long, I apologize, but I am going to tell another personal story. You know, as mayor of the city of North Bay, I was pleased to go to the cutting of the ribbon 10 years ago of the new OPP Centre in North Bay. It was beautiful, beautiful building, very, very functional. But I drive by Highway 1117 every weekend when I'm home, and I see the old OPP station sitting on the highway empty. Smoke coming out the chimney in the winter, driveway being plowed all winter long, lawn being cut all summer, leaves being raked every fall. $1.1 million has been spent keeping that building empty for 10 years. So Minister Walker and our entire cabinet and our entire caucus have addressed this. We put not only the OPP building in North Bay for sale, I personally hammered in the for sale sign. I did. We put 135 properties for sale. These are properties that we ought not have anything to do with anymore. And I informed Minister Walker that on April 25th, we received an unconditional offer, or on March 25th, we received an unconditional offer for the building in the city of North Bay. It closes this week. We will now have no more $1.1 million on our expense line. We will no longer have an issue with taking care of an empty building and all the liabilities. We have a taxpayer in the city of North Bay who bought that building. He is going to put a business in that building, and the city of North Bay will now receive taxes. That's the efficiencies that Premier Ford talks about. Thanks for delivering, Billy. I'll have to think what to cut out of the speech to make up for that time, but I have to tell you, our people-focused approach, it also extends to how government treats drivers. Our government is making transformative changes to the province's broken auto insurance system, and it starts with giving drivers more options when deciding which insurance coverage suits their needs, and gives drivers control over their rates. And I'm smiling as I look over here, Kim. We will also allow insurance companies to offer drivers discounts and a variety of coverage options not previously available. I want to say thank you to my parliamentary assistant, Doug Downey. He's led this file, and Doug, you've done an absolutely terrific job, and I know we're all looking forward to the details rolling out in the coming weeks and months. Our government supports drivers, but we also are making significant investments to support commuters throughout the GTA. Our current regional GO Rail network is realizing only a fraction of its potential, and that's why we are implementing the largest increase in GO Rail service in 5 years. And we are committed to providing two-way, all-day service every 15 minutes in core segments of the network. But we are also committed to building a modern, efficient, rapid transit system. By uploading the TTC's subway network to the province, we will be creating a truly integrated regional transit system. This would allow the province to get projects built better, faster, cheaper, which is good news for taxpayers and for commuters. Our government is making the single largest capital contribution to new subway builds and extension in Ontario's history. Yeah, that's clap-worthy. I think so. Our government is committing $11.2 billion of a total cost of $28.5 billion to support 4 rapid transit projects in the GTA, more than doubling the initial commitment that we made during the campaign. So as you've heard, these 4 projects would be an extension of the Eglinton Crosstown Light Rail Transit Project west to Pearson Airport, the Yonge North Subway extension to Richmond Hill and Markham, the Scarborough Subway extension, and the new Ontario Subway line, which is a more functional version of the downtown relief line, and this will take you from Ontario Place to the Science Centre. Now, I have to tell you, Premier Ford, on one of our chats the other day, he said to me, buddy, I got to tell you, other than being elected Premier, this was the best political day I've had in government. So that is how strong the Premier feels about this huge and historic investment in transit. Now, getting Ontario moving with better, faster, cheaper transit is good for business as it helps people access more jobs and greater opportunity. As Premier Ford has said time and time again, Ontario is open for business and open for jobs. Budget 2019 introduces the Ontario Job Creation Investment Incentive, and that is a $3.8 billion corporate tax relief over 6-year program, and it's for businesses who make investments in machinery upgrades or expansions to help them grow and create jobs. Our government is also working to build the skilled workforce of the future through a modernized apprenticeship and a skilled trade system across Ontario. And we'll start in the schools by ensuring that our young people know that the trades are a valued and rewarding career pathway for them. Yeah. For employers, we will establish a new financial incentive program to help them train more and more apprentices. And we're cutting much of the job-killing red tape and regulatory burdens that are holding businesses back from hiring more skilled tradespeople and training more apprentices, and that includes reforming the Ontario College of Trades. Now, with respect to red tape, a recent study shows it costs nearly $33,000 per business in Ontario to comply with regulations. That is the highest of any province in the country. Our government is addressing this issue head-on, and we have set a target to reduce Ontario's regulations and barriers to business by 25% by the year 2020. That is a very aggressive but much-needed advance. We are introducing high-impact legislation every spring and every fall to cut red tape, and we are looking to everyone in this room to share your ideas. Help us eliminate all of the unnecessary regulations. Our government is also continuing the fight against the job-killing federal carbon tax that was imposed on April 1st, and that tax is driving up the cost of everything from groceries to gas. We are challenging this tax in court, and we are proposing to introduce the Federal Carbon Tax Transparency Act, and that will ensure that every consumer know exactly how much money the federal government is taking out of your pocket at the pumps. I'm going to talk a little bit about the capital markets for this audience today. In some respects, Ontario's competitive edge lies in the strength of our capital markets. We are one of the world's leading financial centers. The Toronto Stock Exchange is the 9th largest equity market in the world by market cap at $2.2 trillion US. Ontario accounts for over half of Canada's securities industries, and we are Canada's most significant capital market by a large margin, and we need to strengthen that position. We talked earlier about how our government is driving economic growth by cutting red tape and reducing the regulatory burden on business, and that work extends to Ontario's capital markets and the financial services industry. Our government is working very closely with the Ontario Securities Commission to enhance our competitiveness on the world stage and promote strong, efficient capital markets. In Budget 2019, we laid out a 5-point plan to create confidence in our capital markets. First, the creation of the OSC Burden Reduction Task Force, with a mandate to eliminate unnecessary rules and streamline processes to help save businesses time and money. Second, we are establishing a new Office of Economic Growth and Innovation at the OSC. It will be specifically tasked with bolstering capital formation and promoting financial information in its work and business with other regulators. Third, our government will work with the OSC to undertake efforts that will improve the investment experience and investor protection, such as implementing the Seniors Strategy and Action Plan. Fourth, we will ensure there is an actual cost-benefit analysis in the OSC rulemaking process. Somebody likes that. And fifth and finally, our government will work with the OSC to establish clear service standards for market participants. So this plan, this is a priority with our government, and we will ensure regular progress updates are included in the OSC's annual reports. We believe that it is absolutely critical that Ontario has a globally competitive, efficient, and strong capital markets regulatory system. Such a system allows us to attract investment from around the world, streamline capital raising, and protect investors from financial risk and misconduct. If we don't stay competitive, if we don't cut the red tape, if we don't embrace innovation, we risk losing our edge, and we risk losing the investment and jobs that our province needs to stay competitive. Our government is also moving forward with fostering modern and efficient financial services regulation. It was a few lines in the budget, and not quite everybody may have seen that, but in Ontario today, you know that there's no title protection for financial planners and financial advisors. Budget 2019 allows us to move forward with legislation that will create further consumer confidence in financial planning and advisory services. Our plan responds to long-standing calls from consumers and the financial services industry to take action. This new title protection framework will take a measured approach that will enhance consumer protection without introducing an unnecessary regulatory burden. So our government continues to work to make life easier, simpler, and more affordable for people. And we know that fostering strong, efficient capital markets in Ontario will enable our economy to thrive, to innovate, and to create jobs and opportunities for everyone. Now, your two favorite words. In closing, our budget has started us down a path to fiscal balance and sustainability. We are keeping the promises we made. We are respecting taxpayers' dollars, and we are protecting our world-class healthcare and education systems. In Budget 2019, we are making measured, thoughtful, but difficult decisions in order to improve the quality of life here in Ontario. Reaching our destination will not be easy, but it means focusing on things that matter most and securing a bright future for generations to come. By making smart, long-term decisions, reinventing the way government delivers services, and focusing our resources on individuals and families in the greatest need, the province is restoring trust, transparency, and accountability, and balancing the budget in a responsible manner. Promise made, promise kept. Thank you.
Minister, thank you very much for those very thoughtful remarks. We've got time for a number of questions that have come in. First of all, the U.S. has made a number of changes to its tax regime over the past few years, including lowering taxes. How does that play out for Ontario's competitiveness?
Well, this is, thank you for the question, Andrew, and whoever submitted that question. You know, this is of a particular concern. Of course, it was identified in the financial accountability as one of the risks. And if you look at what happened in the States over the last couple of years, their tax rate has dropped more than 10 points. Dangerously close, it's about 18, dangerously close to ours at about 16. And we look at that as one of the risks in Ontario, and so we've done a couple of things. The first thing we did was in January, where the previous government's scheduled tax increases were in place, we did not go ahead with those tax increases in January, saving seniors and families and businesses more than hundreds of millions of dollars. Quite frankly, with respect to the small businesses, we looked at the passive income tax that was about to come in. We did not go ahead with that passive tax, and that saved 7,900 businesses up to $40,000 each. So that was the first thing we did, was we again, when you're in a hole, you stop digging. So we did not go deeper with the tax increases. And then we looked at the business community and we talked. What do you need? We had promised to bring corporate tax relief, and we asked the business community, what do you need? What will help you? What will help you today? And they said, you know, look in the States, not only have they dropped the tax rate, but they've also put in the accelerated capital cost on their equipment. And we said, we understand, is this what you need? We want that, and we want it now. And so we have put $3.8 billion into the accelerated capital cost allowance, and we have now packaged it in a program called the Job Creation Program. And so that is a massive influx, which drops us from about 16 down to about 12. So we're now really back in a safe margin and can compete head-on with the states. So businesses in Canada, multinationals that we're deciding, is our CapEx going to happen in Ontario or the states? We've now turned that back in our favor. So that was a very planned and a very serious move to assist the business community.
Interesting. Thank you very much. You've talked about how this budget plots a path back to balance. How did you think about the speed at which to do that? I mean, as a finance minister, that must be one of the harder decisions to make. Really? You're going to let me say it? We took the Goldilocks approach. I know you haven't heard that before, so I'll tell you what I mean by that. You know, during the run-up to the budget, we had talked quite seriously about that, and we had said it can't happen too fast. It just can't, because of what it would do to the economy. It can't take too long, because quite frankly, anybody can do that, and it needs to be just right. And I believe that we have landed on the most responsible, the most reasonable path to balance that will provide relief to families, relief to businesses, while protecting the core values that we have. It protects healthcare, it protects education, and it protects our public services. And you know, when you do both of those at the same time, that you've come up with a time frame that is just right. We've two more questions, Minister. First of all, when you look at the next sort of 12, 24 months for the Ontario and Canadian economies, what worries you? Well, we listen to the economists, and we know that we have seen their economic forecasts going forward, and we have done what I believe to be the most prudent thing. We have taken their numbers. We've downsized just a little bit, so we've got a lot of prudent activities built into the budget. We have our contingency. We have a reserve at $1 billion this year, $1 billion next year, $1 billion the year after, $1.3 billion the further year, $1.6 billion in year 5. So we've built in a lot of protection for whatever comes our way. And we're, I feel, on very solid ground that we're ready. We've got all of the efforts that we are putting into job creation, cutting red tape, lowering hydro rates, putting in this job creation incentive. All of these are ready to help our businesses continue to grow and to expand, and they will lead us. They will lead us. They have so far. We've created more than 100,000 jobs since Premier Ford was elected, and that tells us
All of the things that we're doing, all of these things, all of these activities cumulatively are putting people back to work. They're building a business confidence. You know, we went to New York after the fall economic statement, and I stood in front of a group like this and gave a speech a little bit similar to this. And the buzz in the room after and the direct conversation was, and they weren't talking about my speaking ability, they said, you know, we have here in New York have not heard a speech like that in 15 years, and they knew Ontario was open for business and open for jobs. They bought our bonds that day, $500 million worth of bonds that day, so it was a successful trip to New York. We're looking forward to going back there in 2 weeks with a similar message. So I think with our job creation incentive and all of the securities that we're putting in place for families and individuals, our relief, our care program that's going to bring relief to 75, up to 75% of the cost of childcare to 300,000 families, to bring seniors dental to up to 100,000 people. Our LIFT program, low-income individual and family tax credit. This is bringing relief to low and middle-income class earners. We are doing all the right pieces, and it's working.
Great. Thank you, Minister. The last question has two parts. There's a number of people in the audience who want to know your predictions, first of all, for the Leafs in the playoffs, and second of all, for the Alberta election today. So thoughts on either of those?
Yes, I do happen to have thoughts on both of those. Look, I still remember that day, that rainy day in 1967, the last time the Leafs won. I am the eternal optimist. I used to, as a young kid, I slept in my Toronto Maple Leaf shirt. It's worn out. It's just worn. My mom still, she says, you should post that picture. It's so cute. I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if they'd love it or hate it, but I believe the Leafs are going all the way this year. I absolutely believe that. And I genuinely believe you are going to see a Conservative government elected in the province of Alberta. And I absolutely cannot wait for that to happen and have yet another ally. I just can't believe how the federal government continues to treat various provinces, and I look forward to having a very strong, very powerful voice come out of Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everybody.
So there you have it from the Finance Minister. The Leafs are going all the way. Minister, I'm sure many people in the audience are hoping you'll be able to stand up here in a few weeks and say, promise made, promise kept. Minister, on behalf of the Canadian Club of Toronto, I'd like to extend our thanks for including us in your very busy schedule. There's so many people that wanted to hear your message today, another sold-out crowd for you. Really appreciate you making the time to do this. The provincial budget, I think, sets us on a very exciting course and certainly is very much in line with what was promised by yourself and by your government when you came into power. And thank you very much for sharing details of it today, and I think for doing so in such a thoughtful and rousing manner. I think there was 30 or 40 breaks for applause, which is more than average for us. So thank you very much once again for joining us. Just before we conclude, I'll tell you about a few upcoming events. On April 30th, we're hosting an important discussion about diversity on Bay Street. That's called Being Brown Downtown, and it's about the lived experience of people of color in corporate Canada. And we've also got a panel on medical cannabis on May 9th, which we hope you can join us for. I'd like to extend another round of thanks to Bruce Power, Bell Canada, and the Ontario Real Estate Association, and also to MediaEvents.ca and VBC for live streaming today's event. Thank you all of you for joining us. Enjoy your morning.